All right, so we're on our last section, 9-9. So lots to study this chapter and prepare for the test. The quadratic formula and the discriminant. So the way we talked about many ways we can solve a quadratic equation. Remember, a quadratic, by now you should know, looks like that. Has the x squared. Do you remember how you check it with coordinates? Remember you do your little xy chart? You put your coordinates in, you get the first difference, and if they're the same, it's linear. And then you do the second difference, and if it's the same, it's quadratic. So just a little reminder on that. But the first way we talked about was graphing. The second way we talked about was factoring. Then we had square roots. And square roots worked when we did not have there was no b, I should say b was 0, right? So that this x term fell out and you just had the x squared. 4, we did yesterday, completing the square. And today, the quadratic formula. So we also have talked about how many solutions a quadratic can have. Do you remember what that answer was? We talked about how it could go this way, it could go and touch once, or it could go through and twice. This is 2 solutions, 1 solution, no solution. Because remember, solutions are where it hits the x-axis. No reviewing going on here. So that's 0, 1, or 2. Now, we're going to start off with something called the discriminant. The discriminant is used because you can determine how many solutions you have. So let's highlight that with the word discriminant. Going to have to memorize that. And if we're looking for how many solutions, these are your answers. You only can have 0, 1, or 2. You have a 33.3 repeating percent chance of getting it right. But of course you have to show your work. So here's our equation, and we're going to figure out what is A, what is B, what is C, and then we're going to put these in here. Order of operations, remember you square, and then you're going to have to multiply all these, then you take this minus whatever that was. If you get a positive answer here, then that is 2 solutions. Use a different color here, and that is this type of graph when it goes through in 2 spots. If this happens to equal exactly 0, there's 1 solution, and that is when it touches in exactly 1 spot. Could have turned down too, any of these could. And if you get a negative value when you do that, that is 0 solutions. And that means it never touches the x-axis. Okay, so let's practice and show you what I mean. It says find the number of real solutions. So my answers for these are 0, 1, or 2. But I first will get to a different number first, and that's going to be this number. Then I have to see if it's positive, negative, or 0. So, first thing you need to know is what's A, B, and C. So A is 3, B is negative 2, and C is 2. So I'm going to write my formula down here, b squared minus 4ac. Now we're going to substitute, and when you substitute values in, and if they're ever negative, you need to put them in parentheses. So when I put this b in, I see it's a negative, so I'm going to put it in parentheses. Minus 4 times a times c. I put these in parentheses too because there's so many of them. So remember, you have to do this beginning part first. Negative 2 squared, that's 4. Minus, and then you got to do this whole part. 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 is 24. And what is 4 minus 24, or 4 plus a negative 24? Got positives and negatives. There's more negatives. That team wins by how many? 20. So negative 20 again is not my answer. But the part we need to notice is this part right here. Although I do check the whole number to make sure you did your math right. It's negative. So I go up here and I look for negative and I see, oh, 0 solutions. So try the next one. First thing you want to always do is write your A, B, and C. You always want to start with your formula. And then you guys go ahead now and substitute in. Hopefully you got that. So 11 squared is 121 minus, let's see here, what do we have? 4 times 12 is 48, times 2 is 96. And when you subtract 121 minus 96, you get a positive 25. So again, the important part of our answer here is that it's positive. So I go up here and notice positive means there's 2 solutions. That is my answer. Because remember, it says find the number of real solutions. Okay, should probably stop the video and then try this last one, then turn it back on and see if you did it right. So A is 1, B is 8, and C is 16. So we got the B squared minus 4AC. B is 8 minus 4 times A times C. 8 squared is 64 minus 4 times 1 times 16 is also 64. I get 0. Okay. Important thing here is I got 0. So I go up here. 0 means, where's 0? Right here. I'm sorry, I was going here. I go here. The discriminant is 0. I have 1 solution. So I hope that is clear to you. That's again to figure out how many solutions and what type of graph you're going to get. Now we're going to take it a step further. And we're going to look at the quadratic formula. And I'm hoping, well, for one, highlight this right off the bat. When you write this in your homework, you will start to memorize it. Okay? It's the quadratic formula. It is important. It is another one, like completing the square, that always works. Okay? But what you have to notice is this division, this fraction sign, is under all of it, not just the square root. Okay, so it's the opposite of B, plus or minus the square root, and then you notice this inside part is the what? Discriminant. And then all over 2 times A. So let's try it. Again, write your A, B, and C. A is 1, B is -1, and C is -20. I got negatives. I got to make sure to put parentheses around those. So I'm going to start with my formula. Opposite of B, plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Do copy it. Why? So that you memorize it. X equals opposite of B. So B is a -1. So -1 is a 1. Right? A -1. That's what you really have right here. A negative, and then the B is a -1. So those two give you positive. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. So that's the negative 1 squared minus 4 times a times c. Now notice the whole thing is over 2 times a. So some of these things you might kind of do as you go, which is fine. I would have in the first place done this in my head, negative 1 squared and put a 1 minus 4 times a negative 20 is a negative 80. Right there, people make mistakes, class. Right here. This subtraction is here, and then there's also a negative. Together they give you what? A positive. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of what? What is this? 81 all over 2. Well, that looks nice because the square root of 81 is what? 1 plus or minus 9 over 2. No, we're not done. Again, because of this plus or minus, we have to work through 2 scenarios. Or scenarios, right? Whichever way you say it. 1, and now we're going to do the plus first. Class, what's 1 plus 9? 10. Divided by 2. 5. What is 1 minus 9? Negative 8. Divided by 2. Negative 4. And those are your solutions. Okay, and now I'm going to show you a little bit more condensed how I typically will do it, and I think it will work well for you. Let's do our A is 1, our B is negative 2, and our C is negative 3. First issue is making sure you don't miss those negatives, okay? Now, opposite of B, plus or minus. This we're doing to work on memorizing the formula. Now, when I substitute in, I'm going to do some of this as I go. So the opposite of B. So it's a negative 2. So the opposite of negative 2 is 2. Plus or minus square root of B squared. So what is negative 2 squared? 4. Plus, I'm sorry, not plus. Hello. There we go. Okay, minus 4 times A times C. So 4 times 1 is 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. All over 2 times A, which is 2. Plus, 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 all over 2. Oh, that works out nice again. Square root of 16 is 4. So 2 plus 4 is 6. Divided by 2 is 3. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Divided by 2 is negative 1. Okay, again, I would pause and try it and see how you do. With the difference with this one, though, don't forget before you turn it off, the video, move this 5 over. Because this is not like completing the square where you need that number over here. We need to have them all equal to 0 for this. So we're going to rewrite that with the 5 over there. And then the A is 2, and the B is 3, and the C is negative 5. And substitute away. Be very careful with your signs. Okay, so the opposite of B is 3. So the opposite of 3 is negative 3, plus or minus b squared, so 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times a, which is 8, times a negative 5, which is a negative 40, all over 2 times a. 2 times 2 is 4. X equals negative 3 plus or minus plus square root of 49, yay, all over 4. I like it because when that square root happens like that, it's nice. Negative 3 plus or minus square root of 49 is 7 over 4. Let's see what we got. Negative 3 plus 7 is 4. Divided by 4 is 1. Negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10. Divided by 4. Well, negative 10 divided by 4. That doesn't come out even, but we can simplify it. We can still leave it as a fraction, but divide the top and bottom by 2, and we get a negative 5 halves. All right, one more for good measure here. A is 1, B is 3, and C is negative 7. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals opposite of b. So b is 3, so it's going to be the opposite, negative 3. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. b is 3, 3 squared is 9. Minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, negative 28. All over 2 times a, which is 2. Plus, x equals a negative 3 plus or minus 28 plus 9 is 37. All over 2. Okay, we finally hit one. Up here it was 16, square root of 16, square root of 81, square root of 49. Those are all perfect squares. 37 is not. You can't get the square root of 37. If you did, it's going to go off the calculator. So guess what? Even though that looks kind of crazy, that's your answer. You leave it like that. That's the exact answer for that. Negative 3. In order to get an approximated answer, you'd have to literally take, is this on? 37 square root plus the negative 3 equals, divided by 2, 1.54. That's one of them. And then we'd have to do the other. Okay, so now at the very end of this section, it says methods of solving, and it reviews, like I did at the beginning, methods of solving quadratic equations. And you're going to have some problems like this where it's like solve with any method you want. So you could pick any of these methods. When I see a 1 before the x squared, my intuition is I want to at least see if box 1 works, because box 1 is just nice and easy. Oh, so let's try it out. What plus what equals negative 9? What times what equals 20? Does that work? Well, it sure the heck does, doesn't it? Negative 4, negative 5, negative 4, negative 5. Yep, that works. X minus 4 times x minus 5 equals 0. And remember, when you have two things multiplied, what makes that 0? When x is 4. And what makes that 0? When x is 5. So that did work out. But it's possible to, well, you couldn't have used square roots because it has the x term. Could have used graphing, and you could have used completing the square quadratic. This is clearly the simplest. It just doesn't always work. But when I say with any method, that means you get to pick. And I put these down here because it's sometimes helpful to understand, like, what's the good thing about graphing? Well, it always works, but it does give you an approximate. And you can see the numbers quickly, especially if you have a graphing calculator, you can plot that pretty quick. It just can't always give you an exact. That's the disadvantage with graphing. For factoring, it's good to try first. It's pretty straightforward if you can factor it. But not all quadratics are factorable. When do you square roots? When it has no x term. Remember, when there's no b. The b is 0. But you can't use this if there's is an x term. That's the disadvantage. And then completing the square always works. It just sometimes involves difficult calculations with those fractions. Quadratic formula also always works. But other methods could possibly be easier and less time consuming.